don't want to hear that, that's for sure.
Bohemian Rhapsody.
I'll see if you can, I'll check with him, see what's going on.
Can capture multiple
That would be
Okay, we can do that. I didn't know. Do you want to be detailed or?
no, but now that we have a couple of templates.
Yeah, good work.
Cam, just for those 3-hour hearings, we'll bring in live entertainment during the
During
intermission.
intermission?
Yes, yes. I think there's room in the budget. I think, yeah, we got it covered. So.
I might know someone.
I was gonna say, we could probably scrounge up some free
Although
entertainment.
Stormwater
Yeah,
documents have
freeze in the
too.
budget.
Those are a subsequent condition for report.
True.
That sounds
Many
fun.
times they come there.
Trying to,
That's
did you eat
not
lobster?
I did. I really found out I like crab better than lobster. Crab
Oh, do you?
rolls. Yeah.
Oh, crab rolls are really good too.
Lobster. I had a lobster. And then
It happens all the time, you know, they
I
build
had
plans,
lobster.
stormwater and plans all go together. It's not easy. Yeah, yeah, I've got them in that
I love
habit.
it all. I love seafood.
You'd turn back 100 years if you make them drag their
In
feet.
fact, my friends and I have a seafood
Yeah.
lovers
Yep,
club.
it's just Danish sponsors
Go
who's
out like once a month on a Tuesday to surf or somewhere else.
presenting to us over there.
For our seafood club.
Adam, how you doing?
SLC.
All right.
SLC.
All right, there's our quorum.
They know we need
trying
to
to
be
stay away from
separated, right?
Stay over there, Bob.
They can feel
We never get to
isolated.
sprawl out, so maybe.
Yeah,
All right.
Give you a little extra room to move.
That's it. All right. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the October 3rd, 2024 meeting of the City of Nashua Planning Board. First item on the agenda, Madam Secretary, could we please get a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mayor Donches, Mike Peterson, Bob Bollinger,
Here.
Adam Varley,
Here.
Maggie Harper, here, Dan Hudson,
Here?
Scott Leclaire, Larry Hirsch, Cameron Green,
Here.
and Alderman Clee.
All right, we have a quorum. Thank you, Ms. Harper. Next item on the agenda, approval of minutes. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review the minutes of the September 19th, 2024 Planning Board hearing and is willing to make a motion on their acceptance? Mr. Varley?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes as written.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Mr. Varley. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Yes.
Okay. 4 yeses, 1 abstention. Motion passes. All right, next item on the agenda, communications. Sam or Scott, anything new to report on since we got our packets?
And I think everything's been loaded up.
All right.
All comments.
Excellent, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, report of chair, committee, and liaison. Ms. Harper, anything you'd
Nothing
like
to
to share?
report at this time, Mr. Chair.
Very good, thank you. All right, before we start hearing our regular cases tonight, I would like to read the planning board procedure. The procedure of the meeting is as follows. After the legal notice of each conditional, special use permit, site plan, or subdivision plan is read by the chair, the board will determine if the application is complete and ready for the board to take jurisdiction. The public hearing will begin, at which time the applicant or representative will be given time to present an overview and description of their project. The applicant shall speak to whether or not they agree with recommended staff stipulations. The board will then have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or staff. The chair will then ask for testimony from the audience. First, anyone wishing to speak in opposition or with concern to the plan may speak. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. This would be the time to ask questions they may have regarding the plan. Next, public testimony will come from anyone wishing to speak in favor of the plan. The applicant will then be allowed a rebuttal period, at which time they shall speak to any issues or concerns raised by prior public testimony. After this is completed, the public hearing will end and the board will resume the public meeting, at which time the board will deliberate and vote on the application before us. The board asks that both sides keep their remarks to the subject at hand and try not to repeat what has already been said. Above all, the board wants to be fair to everyone and make the best possible decision based on the testimony presented and all applicable approval criteria established in the Nashua Revised Ordinances. Thank you for your interest and courteous attention, and kindly please turn off or silent your phones at this time if you would. All right. First item on the agenda tonight is new business subdivision plan, case A24-0169. As any member of the board had an opportunity to review this application and is willing to make a motion for board acceptance. Ms. Harper?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to take jurisdiction of A24-0169.
All right, motion by Ms. Harper to accept jurisdiction for the property at 61 Manchester Street. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Varley. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. If there's a representative from the applicant, please come forward to the podium.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Morgan Hollis. I'm an attorney at Gottesman and Hollis, 39 East Pearl Street in Nashua, and I'm here representing the applicant. The applicant is CPC Investments LLC. They are the owner of the property, which is located at the corner of Manchester Street and Reservoir Street. Maynard and Paquette Engineering Associates is the engineer of record, and they were unable to present this evening, so they asked me if I would present the application. Obviously, I can't answer any engineering questions, but I can certainly try to interpret the plan and give my best. This is a fairly straightforward two-lot subdivision. It's an existing lot with a large house on it. The lot itself is quite large. It's 35,724 square feet. The proposal is to subdivide a portion of the property which is located on Reservoir Street off of the existing property, which has frontage on both Manchester Street and Reservoir Street. The proposed property lot will be 11,208 square feet. It'll be fully in conformance with all of the regulations, site plan, subdivision regulations. It meets the frontage, the width, and the minimum lot size. The property itself is, as I say, has frontage on Reservoir Street. The application has 3 waivers as part of the application. The 3 waivers are 190-282B9, which is to waive the requirements to show existing conditions within 1,000 feet of property boundaries. To do so would require a substantial amount of engineering, which wouldn't really aid in the plan review itself. The property is surrounded by neighbors, single family for the most part, but some more than a single family, lots of similar size. This is simply, as I say, taking an existing lot and creating a new conforming lot with a driveway that'll be off of Reservoir Street. The second request for waiver is 190-221C, to waive the requirements to provide all utilities underground. All the utilities in that area are above ground, and there are utility poles right adjacent to the property, and it would be an extreme hardship to have to go underground with utilities for just this one lot, which is being created off of 2. And the third waiver request is 190-275A, to waive the requirements to provide a lighting plan. There's no new lighting proposed other than a residential light, which would be standard and would not have any cause to create a lighting plan demonstrating one light on a house that would have any impact on anyone. The house would, as shown on the plan, fits within the boundary line itself. I believe it's Plan 3, showing the grading plan. You can also see that the lot itself is fairly level. There aren't any real drainage issues that'll arise from the construction of the house on the property. There is a detention basin that's proposed to the front of the property so as to retain any runoff which might be added to Reservoir Street from the house and the driveway. The house itself, as shown on the plan, is proposed to be relatively close. You can see the catch basin sort of behind the house, if you will. That's to control any runoff going the opposite direction. And there's a fair amount of area distance between the proposed house, which would be in line frontage-wise with the existing house on Reservoir Street. I think it's a fairly straightforward, as I say, subdivision into two lots, both of which comply. The existing house would remain. There would be no demolition, nor would there be any change on the house or the property itself. There is a letter from the fire department that indicates that there'll be a new address created. And there's also a comment letter from the City of Nashua Public Works indicating a number of criteria and conditions. And in the staff report, the staff makes a series of recommended conditions of approval. And the applicant is in agreement with the recommendation of the staff. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions from the board? Ms. Harper?
Just one quick question regarding the overhead utilities. Will a new pole have to be set, or you don't really have to do much as far
I
as
don't know
the
the answer.
utilities go?
Dan might be able to assist me in reading this plan. Or Scott, do you know if there's any new poles coming in?
I don't recall, no.
I don't see any located.
They should show up on the plan if they
Yeah,
will.
I'm looking, this is a grading plan.
There is a pole at the corner of Reservoir and Stark Street, which is directly across
the
from where this lot is proposed, so it's likely that they would extend utilities from that pole.
Okay, thank you.
Pretty
Thank you.
typical.
Is that the one right in the corner there?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Yep. I don't see any proposed on site.
They can even just run it directly to the house, it depends. PSNH.
So run across Reservoir and then tie into the house across. Excuse me.
Mr. Varley, please.
Yeah, and I recognize I'm about to ask, it was really more of an engineering question, so, but with that caveat, I'm just wondering, and maybe Mr. Johnson could comment on this as well, but with the location of the driveway, do we have any concerns about, sightlines, given that we've got it looks like it's basically right at the intersection of Reservoir and Stark there, where the driveway is gonna be located. I mean, it doesn't look like there's really, any place we could locate it on the lot that wouldn't have that issue, but I'm just wondering if that's something that the applicant, you evaluate.
I don't think there is any other place that, it can be left or right as you look at the house. But I believe that area of Reservoir Street, having traveled it many times, straight up, it's going slightly uphill. I think that's the farthest distance from the next interchange up the hill. So any cars that are coming down, that's better sight visibility than if it were located farther up the hill. In terms of those that are coming up Reservoir, I would say it's better to be where it is because of the next street up, which would be a harder sight line.
The only thing I might add to Mr. Barley's comment, Dan, I don't know if this came up in the engineering review, there's some existing vegetation along the frontage of that lot now on Reservoir Street. I imagine some of that will have to be cleared anyway, just to make room for the driveway, but if vegetation can be cleared to the extent possible that maximizes the available sight lines, I think that would be a reasonable.
It's all planned to come down in the frontage area.
Okay.
I don't know if you've been up there, but it's full of the vines that go up in the trees and actually encroaches out into the road right now. So all of that would be cleared down to make a clear visible sight line.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Farley, yes, please.
It's sort of the flip side of the point you just raised in terms of the vegetation in the front. Can you speak to what plans or expectations, the applicant has for retaining trees in the back of the lot? Or, I guess buffering to any other lots?
I think
As shown on the plan, it says existing vegetation to be preserved. And then there's a note which says, number 2, a portion of the existing vegetation is to be cleared. Proposed area of vegetation to remain is approximate. So essentially, Kevin, you might be
Yeah, I
easier if
guess-
the applicant addresses. he's
Right,
gonna
yeah, I
do it.
guess what I'm, to try to get a sense of, what is the amount to be cleared versus the amount to be retained approximate. I understand you can't know that definitively until you're out, until you're out there building.
Yeah, Kevin Corvo, CBC Investments. The plan is, the front vegetation along Reservoir Street obviously has to be 100% removed. It's got that invasive species, bittersweet or whatever, that vine that grows up. Vegetation on the right side, most of that will be removed because there's only a 10-foot setback, and the neighbor on the right expressed the desire to have most of those vines and stuff removed on that side. As far as the vegetation in the rear of the property, we're going to keep as much of that as possible. I don't see any reason to cut into any of that vegetation. The only thing that sometimes happens during construction is when you're digging the foundation, you obviously need to get equipment and move dirt around, and that's really the only spot on the property to pile it up. So, that's the plan as far as site work. So some of that, it'll go right up to that vegetation, but our plan is not to remove any. And one correction, there is a utility pole right on the corner, on Reservoir Street.
That's the one you were referring
Yeah, there's also one, if you look at
to. On
where,
your side of the street.
on the other side of the street, right where the manhole is, and that's where the utilities will come from, kind of right on the edge of the driveway. So, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's shown on, they show the sewer, right where the sewer is, on where the sewer grate is, the square right by the right lot line. The utility pole is literally right on the lot line,
Thank you.
so.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Okay, Mr. Green,
I have one.
please.
Is the dirt going to be temporarily stored on site, or is it staying permanently and being regraded back for the summer?
Kevin?
The dirt is temporary, Kevin Corvo, CVC Investments. The dirt is usually just temporarily stored there. They just usually dig the foundation, literally in the same week, they pour the foundation, and then they backfill. So it's very temporary.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Mr. Hudson?
Not a question, but just a comment. So this Reservoir Street is in cutting moratorium until September 3rd of 2025. So this will have to go to the Board of Public Works for approval. So that'll be a condition, a note that it's added to the plan, but this will need to go there before it can proceed to construction.
All right,
Right. We understand that.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Hudson. All right. Dan, I guess I'll just keep it on you for a second.
Yeah.
From an engineering perspective, is anything insurmountable in Joe's comments that you think can't be addressed, or is that
No, I was just,
characterized as a lot of cleanup?
yeah, I don't think there's anything insurmountable, no. Just, it needs that Board of Public Works approval. It's probably the biggest thing. But other than that, it's just a little cleanup, yeah, no major issues.
Okay, great, thank you. Other questions from the board? All right, seeing none at this time, Attorney Hollis, thank you. This time I'll open it up to the public. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition or with concern, please come right up to the podium and identify yourself, name and address for the record, please. If there's multiple folks here, you're all allowed to come up or speak separately, but obviously one at a time, so, all right, go right ahead, please. I'll let you come up together, that's okay. If you're okay, I'm okay, all right.
Hello, Mr. Chair and the board. My name is Becca Calvi, and I live at 63 Manchester Street with my husband, Alex. And We adamantly oppose this subdivision. We do have quite a few reasons on why. So we purchased our house in August of 2023 as first-time home buyers in the city of Nashua, and we do love the north end and all of its character and how there is a gorgeous colonial next to us that's from 1900s, and we feel like building this house on this property, there's definitely not enough room for it to be comfortable for the three of us existing neighbors who already live right in that corner. The area right behind us, we thought you could even just build a pool house on. It's not big enough for a real size house, but a lot of our concerns come with the traffic and the fact that this is going to be their 43rd property that they are building and renting out to renters. There is no plan for people to live here full-time, so we will have a revolving door of people behind us, and we are just concerned about our privacy and our safety with the revolving door, as well as just keeping our land.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Alex Calvi, 63 Manchester Street, with Becca Calvi. Apologies in advance for probably some informality. We've never done this before.
It's okay.
But the gentleman before us made some interesting points I just wanted to touch on, and word choice, actually, saying that this subdivision lot is surrounded by single-family homes is quite the understatement. I don't know if you've seen it in person. I drive a GMC Yukon that may or may not be able to fit on the lot. So it literally is like the size of a swimming pool. And the home is maybe the width of the street. So to the point about moving the driveway, I don't think you could move the driveway. I'm far from an engineer, but I don't think there's anywhere to move it because the lot's that small. But yeah, again, just to kind of reiterate what Becca's saying, it's just kind of unfortunate. We know you buy a home and you can't really control what goes on outside of your property, but you don't expect to have a house built in your backyard. And I just hope, it sounds like this may be kind of a foregone conclusion, but if this thing happens, it's just, there's already 3 pallets of roofing shingles that are about 4 feet from my driveway. They aren't on my property, they're right up against it. So it gives us apprehension that there's already kind of lack of care about us, and it's just, who knows if there's gonna be piles of dirt, construction equipment, backhoes, et cetera. But yeah, I don't know if we go right into what we would request if this were to be approved. I think if obviously the house is built, if we could request some sort of fence, I think that would be, I mean, obviously we have the trees that block most of the property, but if we could request a fence that kind of would block what's about to happen back there, that would be a really good start. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with the area, but if I wrote a letter, if you look at this AutoCAD, it looks like it's a pretty normal lot, but if you go look at it in person, I feel like it doesn't do it justice at all.
Yeah, we did submit written comments, so we sent these ahead of time on how we feel. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen these, but just going over them, like, we are.
You're welcome. I'm sorry to interrupt. You're welcome to reiterate the high points, but your letter was included as part of our packet, so the board members have read that. But
Yeah, so just go over some of the high points. So we currently don't have any children and don't have a dog, and really bought this house with the thought that we were going to have this beautiful backyard that we entertain in with our friends all the time and have privacy, and we feel like this is just going to ruin the vision we have, almost to the point where we probably would have never purchased a house in North Nashua if this house was here. We rented in South Nashua for 6 years and waited 2 years to buy a house in North Nashua, and now we have purchased this, and our backyard is going to be full of another house and another set of renters. And on the other side of us in 65 Manchester Street is a 4,000 square foot house that has a 3-bedroom rental in the top, and those people come and go all hours of the day and night, and it just increases the traffic in the area. We are right across from St. Chris Church, so it's also a church and a school. There's 3 schools on that street and 2 churches, and it's already borderline unsafe with the amount of traffic up there, and we can barely cross the street without getting hit, even in a crosswalk. So I'm very worried that we're going to add this house and it's just gonna be renter after renter, increased traffic, it's gonna be noisy, it's gonna be loud, and it's just going to be unenjoyable to live here, and it's really upsetting. Another one of our high points is we just feel like this is a money grab, for a lack of a better term. Like, there is tons of land in Nashua that's available, it is pricey, but this seems to be like we purchased a house for $925,000, and instead of going ahead and buying another lot to put a house on, we're just gonna subdivide it and sandwich it between 3 lots and just continue to just put more people in North Nashua. With the Greeley Park Apartments being built, as well as another subdivision, it just seems like we don't need any more houses up there, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Certainly, Mr. Varley.
I mean, just one, just item of clarity, just for the benefit, because you, as you said, most people are not coming before the planning board on a regular basis. So I know you referenced the size of the lot. So I just want to clarify, there are specific standards in the code that say the lot has to be this big, right? And if it wasn't that big, they couldn't come before us unless they got a variance. So the lot size, although it might seem small, it does meet those standards. So, we don't have the authority as the planning board to say, well, we think the lot is smaller than it should be. So I just want to clarify that particular point, because, there are limitations on what we can do. So if somebody meets the minimum lot size, we can't say, well, you need a bigger lot, right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Varley. Did you have anything else to add tonight?
I think the only thing we would add is if they do build a house behind us, we want to keep as much of the vegetation between us and 61 Manchester Street as possible. However, we would like for the new owners to clean out the vegetation that is just dead or dying, or just, it looks awful. We've been spending every weekend cleaning it up. It's not even our property, but it's so embarrassing to be across from a nice school and a nice church and just have all of this stuff overflowing. So I think that we would just really like a nice high fence from where the end of the trees begin to the end of the property line to continue our privacy, so that we can just not have this right in our backyard. And I think that's.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is, sorry about this one, but you guys probably already know, I don't know if it's building or renovating across the street, so all night long you hear bang, 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 bang. And again, it's out of my control, but having 2 properties being built at the same time is probably just gonna add to that. So it'd be far from peaceful. But otherwise, I think that's about it.
All right, thank you. The applicant will have an opportunity to come up and speak again to address any of the issues that you brought up. So
Thank you.
thank you for your testimony. Are there? Oh, certainly, come on up, and please just identify yourself for the record, please. And,
Yeah, I'm Christine Height. I live at 1 Reservoir Street.
I'm Christine DeRozier at 3 Reservoir Street.
I just have a question about one of the waivers, the existing conditions one. What are the implications of waiving this? I don't really understand it, and why does it say Cabot Drive and Boylston Avenue on it?
Well, concerning the Cabot Drive, I think that's been updated since. The gentleman who's the engineer had worked on a similar project, and he copied and pasted. So it's the correct waivers in the packet now.
Okay, so I printed it tonight,
Okay,
so I was
yeah.
just wondering. But what are the implications of waiving this? I don't understand what it's about.
The applicant's representative will have an opportunity to respond directly to any concerns that you bring up. So it'll be their responsibility to basically answer any questions that you have.
So I guess I'm going to come before you as the board in opposition of this subdivision as well. Living at 3 Reservoir, I have now lived next to construction for the last 7 years. And dealing with the construction on a constant basis has just been a nightmare. To have it now happen across the street is just even more of a nightmare. The traffic in the area, Reservoir Street is a cut through for the entire north end. The people that drive through that neighborhood fly. I have 3 small children. We get hit almost on a daily basis trying to cross the street to go to St. Chris. It's to add another house, to add another set of renters, just is going to increase the amount of traffic and the cut-through and the safety for all the kids that are going to and from school, both at Mount Pleasant, Amherst Street, St. Chris. And it's just an abomination to watch that lot get divided. It's been a historical place for this city. People know the house that it's going to be abutted against, and it would be sad to see something get squeezed in the middle of two properties that the city truly loves. Like, kids love walking by that house and seeing it. To see another one squished in with a driveway opposite a street that is constantly barreled through, nobody stops at the stop signs. It's accident after accident waiting to happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess I would speak in opposition to, just in general, for all the other reasons that have been said. I don't want to repeat what other people have said. But I guess my question is, I mean, this, to your point, historic home, right? Beautiful, big lot. Why are we, what is the point of disturbing that, changing that? What does that do for the neighborhood? Why are we trying to pack everybody in like sardines? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, that is a historic property. It's been that way since it's existed, and I don't know why it's being allowed to be altered in this way. It's almost insulting.
I do worry about the house not fitting into that neighborhood too. You have a bunch of very historic homes, and to have a property built in this area and not fit within that neighborhood, it's just gonna look more out of place than most other things. The Greeley apartments are a whole other issue, but to squeeze it into this historic area, it's not gonna fit the neighborhood.
And I guess my last question is, why does it have to be a renter's model? I mean, the larger house, previous owner seemed to be renting it out quite a bit, and now we're going to have another house right up against it with the same thing. Are both houses going to be used this way? That's what I'm more curious about, is how many people are going to be coming and going now. So that's my other question.
All right, well, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience this evening wishing to speak in opposition or with concern? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone in the audience?
Will the telephone be up?
Yeah, I believe we have a Zoom person.
Oh, we do, okay, thank you, Scott.
Sure.
All right, is just one individual?
I think.
Okay, sir, our Zoom caller, just please identify yourself for the record and please provide your testimony.
There he goes. He's good.
Sure. Yeah, this is quite awkward, actually. My name is Theo Fernaus. I'm the owner of that abomination on the corner of Reservoir and Stark Street that's been under development for a good 6 and so years. It's quite ironic that I'm going to be calling and speaking on behalf of this other property. If anyone wants to stop by to speak to me about what's happening up here, I'm always open and willing to explain the situation. That being said, I don't want to get in the way of someone's business, but I do object to this property because I bought this house and I'm restoring this house by myself, which is why it's taking a long time. For one reason or another, we'll get into that some other time. But I like the character of the neighborhood, and it's my intention to preserve the house and retain its original, characteristics and to blend in with the area. And I feel that this new subdivision, like other people have said, to shoehorn, what could be a carport essentially between those other two buildings, the one that we're in, the 61 Manchester Street, is a good-looking building. It's a beautiful house, and it just seems it would be out of character to shoehorn another building in there. The visual aesthetics, I think, will be ruined. I don't see how it can align with the existing surroundings and the overall character, and I think it threatens the history, at least the heritage of the area. the close proximity of these dwellings, it'll just change the feel of the street, and it'll closer resemble, like close quarter, large urban cramped living, which is not what this North End is about. We have the luxury of space, and it would be a shame to lose that. There is a concern for increased traffic. Other owners have spoken about that. I actually recorded an accident on my security cameras where someone blew through the stop sign, cut the corner actually, and ran into one of the residents on Monadnock Street. Luckily, I was able to identify them and help them out there. There's obviously losing the trees would be an issue. There's no telling what's going to happen in the future. Obviously, even the existing structure, the owner could cut down the trees if they want, but with the new development, it just seems like we'll be, cleaning up the vines. I think is a good thing because the previous owner I've spoken to them about it a number of times. They never touched it. They never cared about it. But I'd hate to rate the landscape just to shoehorn a building in there. Speaking of the renters, the previous owner initially had a bunch of students occupying that building, and they were very pleasant kids, and they looked after the yard, and they were very easy to get along with and communicate with. The next set of renters, they were a little bit rougher. It was a family. I'm not making any judgment here, but the man was an ex-con, and we spoke initially, and he was friendly. But my God, the racket that would come from that house with the likes of motorcycles and the trucks they would have that would be working on in the garage, it sort of started to diminish the charm of this area. I was kind of quietly surprised that they left. They didn't look after the property at all. They would blow their leaves onto the road, and then they'd let the street sweepers clean up, or they'd let the snow plows clean up, the debris that they sweep onto the yard, and basically it wasn't looked after. No one can tell who the renters are going to be in this property, but to have that increased footfall, I can't see how it's going to help the area retain its character. There was talk of connecting the overhead wires to the pole that's on the corner of Reservoir and Stark, which connects to our house. And I heard that it's possibly going to be placed on the Manchester Street pole. That's great. I'd hate to have additional wires, but I just want to mention that I have actually relocated the overhead line from the corner pole to a new pole that I installed further on Stark Street, just so I could remove the overhead line and improve the aesthetics of the house. Once it's all said and done, it's going to look great. Obviously, it's a process. But the point of saying that is, like, I would like to retain the quality of this area, and that's what I'm working on with this house. And I'd like, I'd like to I wouldn't want this new development to affect. It's not just my property; it's the whole area. Like I'd like to think I'm speaking for the whole area. I just hope this new development, if it's approved, which I hope it's not, only for the reasons that I'm stipulating. I just hope that it blends in and disappears, but I just can't see that happening. I think that's it.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience or on Zoom would like to speak with opposition or with concern? All right. Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this application? Okay, seeing none. Attorney Hollis, you're welcome to come back up and respond to the prior testimony that you heard.
As you've all heard many, many times, and I personally have unfortunately had the experience of experiencing, nobody likes change. We like to see the woods of someone else's yard, and we don't like to see it go away, but it does unless you buy it, unless you own it. And that's the case here. There's been an allegation that this property is going to be a rental property, and my client has indicated that that is not the case. He's going to build a house, a 40 by 50 foot house, which fits within the setbacks on the property, and will be sold. There's a lot of supposition and also innuendo about assumptions about what might happen to this property, and that's not really fair because you can't make assumptions what any neighbor might be. You might move in and like your neighbors, and then the next day they sell their house and you don't like your neighbors. You might like your neighbors because they put a lot of trees in, and the next day they sell the house and the neighbor removes the trees. Those are the things that happen. The lot itself, as Mr. Varley indicated, meets the minimum lot size by a considerable amount. It's 7,500 square feet is the minimum, 11,000 is the proposed size. As I indicated, the 40 by 50 foot house will fit on that property comfortably and meet all setback requirements. It is not the size of a swimming pool or the size of a truck. It's substantially bigger, 40 by 50. My client does not believe that the board has authority, nor is he interested in putting a fence on a portion of the property in the rear. Fence could come down. Maybe someone who buys the house will put a fence up. Maybe they won't like the fence. If the neighbor wants a fence, the neighbor has the ability to install the fence on their property. The one issue about the landscaping and the tree growth out there is coincidentally the only area where there isn't any density of trees today is the area that on my client's property that was cleared by the abutter. If the trees and shrubbery had not been removed, there'd be more dense vegetation. Maybe some of it's overgrown, maybe some of it isn't, but it's all in the eye of the beholder. As to traffic, there was a traffic study presented, not a study, but an analysis presented that doesn't meet the threshold for a traffic study, but the analysis 1.8 cars per peak hour. Let's round it up to 2. It's a typical single-family home, 2 cars in the course of a peak hour, coming, going. That's really what you're talking about. 14 in 24 hours is standard for every house, and that's what's used. And based upon the size of the lot there, you're not going to have cars parking all over the lot. It just isn't going to happen. I would also have my client inform me that the main house that's going to remain had been at some point converted to an illegal 2-family house, and he is he's removing that second kitchen and setup, so it'll be a single-family home. Both of these will be single-family homes, like most of the homes in that direct neighborhood, right immediately to it. There is no intent to rent this house or to use it as a rental house, so I'm not sure where that supposition or implication may have come from, but my client's here this evening to state that he intends to sell both of the houses, not rent the houses. I'm not sure that that matters because the next person who buys it might rent it. You might rent your house. It's hard to say, but I think, again, there are a lot of assumptions that have been stated here that may logically arise out of standard fear. You see what you see, and then the next thing you know, there's going to be a house there. I think there's been a lot of testimony about fitting into the character of the neighborhood, but I live in the North End. I can tell you there's a lot of character and a lot of different styles of houses, sizes of lots. I don't think that's a criteria for this board particularly, nor would I want to wade into it if I were a board member, but I'm here to assure you that there are a lot of different lot sizes and styles in the North End. And probably most of you know that because you've driven up there from time to time if you don't live there. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I didn't see anything that was raised with regard to whether this meets the regulations or not. Thank you.
Attorney Hollis, there was a question raised about the waivers, specifically survey within 1,000 feet of the property. If you could briefly touch on that. And
Sure.
You're welcome to touch on the other 2 waivers if you want to at this time as well.
Well, the requirement that all of the existing conditions be shown on a plan within 1,000 feet is oftentimes for larger developments when you're proposing to take a larger piece of land. You want to see what's in the general area and how it might impact those existing conditions. This is simply cutting off a piece of land which is 11,000 square feet, 71 feet wide. It's not going to create, you're creating one house, so there really isn't a need to go out and spend the money that would have to be spent to survey within 1,000 feet. You're talking about a significant part of this area. It doesn't gain anything for this planning board in its evaluation of whether the lot meets the site plan regulations. So the standard on waivers is whether or not the imposition of the regulation imposes a hardship without any real connection to the purpose of it. And that's the example here today. We could go out and do the conditions and spend thousands of dollars and come back, and it's not going to make any impact on whether or not this meets the regulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Varley, please.
Just, not that I'm trying to hold you to anything, but just maybe for the benefit of those in the public, do you have a sense of both when, assuming an approval was granted, when the construction would commence and about how long that you would expect that to take?
Yes, Kevin Corvo, CVC Investments. We would like to start construction this fall, get the foundation in. We would like to have it complete by this time around September of next year, which is pretty standard for a 3,000 or so square foot house.
Right, and I'm assuming that's, you're getting the foundation in the fall, and you're probably not really doing anything over the winter, is that?
No, we actually do the framing over the winter.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and as far as we've been doing this a long time. It's actually better to do it then because people don't like it during the summer. I mean, the neighbor that's been under construction for 7 years, I feel like some of the sentiment against, new construction, that house has been under construction for 7 years, off and on, nights, weekends, so on and so forth. Like, we work during normal business hours. We would be framing the house in the winter when people have their windows closed. It's not as much of a nuisance. Once you get the exterior envelope done, then it's just interior work. There's really no, in the spring, so to speak, there's really no noise to the neighbors at that point.
Thank you.
I would add that, as Mr. Hudson pointed out, the applicant can dig into the street for connections without a waiver from the Board of Public Works. And so that might affect the schedule because the Public Works might not grant the waiver. It is due to expire in September, so there's a possibility if the board said no, you have to delay the connection to the street to that time. That doesn't stop construction on site, but in the normal course of construction, you'd like to connect it with how you're going to connect into the street, the sewer and the water.
Please,
To
Mr. Hudson.
to that point, they do need to dig into the street to make service connections too. Usually one of the first things you want to build is your sewer connection before you set your foundation. We are running up against the end of the season, so the Board of Public Works, the next meeting will be on the 24th of October, and then we shut down permits in the beginning of November. So I don't know, I'm not hopeful that even if they grant an approval that work can be done. We might not want to patch in the road over the winter, so those are things we'll have to talk through. But certainly they need to go to the Board of Public Works before they can do any of that street cutting. Unless they can make some provision for, tying those utilities in next year when the season is such that we can do our final roadway restorations and those sorts of things. So those are issues that we'll have to work through with the Board of Public Works.
Okay, thank you. And also, just for a point of clarification, this board doesn't dictate construction schedule, so we can't definitively state thou shalt only do construction at X, Y, and Z times. So, other questions of the applicant at this time? Good.
I think maybe specify other questions from the board.
Oh.
Because I think there are some folks in the audience who are, maybe clarify that I'm saying there's some folks in the audience who've raised hands, so maybe clarify that you're asking for questions from the board members.
That is correct, because the audience members have already had opportunity to voice their opposition, and there is
Yeah,
no
I mean,
rebuttal period. So I was just going over my notes, and I believe that Attorney Hollis and the applicant have at least made reference to the major points, if not all the points that were brought up. Perhaps not to the satisfaction of those in opposition, but I believe that they've done their due diligence by addressing them. So I guess I would maybe just re-ask the question, board members, if there are any outstanding matters that you have or would like to see answered by Attorney Hollis or the applicant. No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I have one, sorry.
Oh, so, that's okay, go for it.
I was just scaling off the plan, the dimensions of the proposed driveway, which is 12 feet wide by 39 feet deep, so deep enough to park maybe 2 cars, front to back. I just want to make sure we don't get into construction and that wants to grow to something else, or if it does, then maybe the plan should be amended as such. It just seems like pretty small driveway for a 40 by 30 house, so I don't know if that's common or what that is, but.
Yeah, I know for a fact, I don't know how, maybe it was confusing to me as well, but the driveway, the house will definitely be a 2-car garage, so the driveway will probably be a 20, I think around 20 to 24 feet wide.
Okay.
As standard.
Yeah, which is, I think, allowable. I just want to make that point. It's something we can address during final plan revisions. I don't think it materially changes anything. We might just need to reaffirm with the engineer that his stormwater letter still is valid in light of the additional impervious area. But we can deal with that after an engineering comment review on completion, so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hudson. Other questions from the board at this time?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see your hands raised. We could go back and forth with this all night. You may not like the answers that they provided, but I believe that they've addressed all of your questions. Unless there is a legitimate reason to reopen this again, but we're not going to go tit for tat all night over this. I think the board is well aware of the concerns. And again, I think the applicant did their best to address them.
I was just trying to make a comment on the fence. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk.
Well, I guess, to be honest with you, no. You're not recognized, but just for, this board doesn't have the right to mandate that they build a privacy fence. If you, as the owner of your property, wishes to build a fence, you may do so. But it's outside of our jurisdiction to mandate that this applicant do something that is not required or outside of what the regulations stipulate. That's the prescient matter before us. We're a land use board that is bound by what is written in ordinance, and that is what we will be casting our vote on. So that is the best answer that I can provide. Again, the applicant provides testimony. You're allowed to ask questions and voice opposition or concern. They do their best to try to address those matters. Nobody probably is going to walk out of this room 100% happy tonight. That's just unfortunately the way it works. It doesn't mean that you weren't heard. It doesn't mean that you were ignored. It just means that the board is bound by what is written in ordinance, and that's how we'll be casting our vote this evening. So I think with that, I'd like to close the public hearing at this time and bring it back to the board. Open to discussion on the matter. Heard quite a bit of testimony this evening. Mr. Barley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And, just to expand a little bit upon your point, there are specifically, 10 criteria that the planning board, is asked to consider when evaluating whether or not to approve, a subdivision plan like this. And, I know there were a couple, I want to address this issue particularly because a couple of abutters referenced, that this wouldn't be in line, with the neighborhood. And, there is one of the criteria that we have is compatibility with the existing character of the neighborhood. But, and I say this a lot, but I've been in the planning board a long time. And, you know, really, something has to be pretty unusual within the context of the existing neighborhood for that to be a relevant factor. So what we're talking about here is a single-family home sitting next to other single-family homes. I understand that, you know, as Attorney Hollis, you know, referenced, it's hard to see what was sort of open land become something other than that, particularly if you had an expectation that that was going to continue to be the case. But, you know, this board can't say to an applicant, you can't build a house here just because we don't personally feel like that's the best use of this particular parcel that, you know, by ordinance can be created because it meets the, you know, the standards for size and, as the applicant said, meets the standards for setback. And I mean, I'm, you know, I don't live in the north end, but I'm pretty familiar with the neighborhood, and you know, just looking at, you know, from the sort of sky view, yes, this happens to be a large lot currently, but there are lots of, you know, smaller lots right in the same vicinity, and houses that are right on top of one another. I mean, you know, houses that are basically right on the line, probably would be non-conforming today in terms of, you know, how a lot of these houses are arranged on the lots. So even taking the most expansive view of, you know, what would be compatible with the existing neighborhood, it's just hard for me to see any circumstance where I would say, well, this single-family house that is in a neighborhood of other single-family houses on lots of varying sizes, some of which are quite a bit small, you know, quite a bit smaller than this big lot now, and you know, any number of which are very close in proximity to one another. I just don't think that there would be any legitimate basis for the board to say, no, we're going to deny this application on that basis. And, you know, as I read through the other, you know, criteria that we have, you know, under the ordinance, in my view, there's nothing in those criteria that would say to me, no, this application, you know, there's a basis for not approving the application based on, you know, the criteria that are before us. As the chairman said, you know, we are bound by, you know, what the ordinance directs us to do in terms of whether we can ultimately approve an application or not. So, you know, from my perspective, the applicant has met the applicable standards in the ordinance. They've met the criteria for subdivision plan approval. You know, that doesn't mean that's a judgment on my part, favorably or disfavorably on, you know, the use of the property, but, you know, they have met the criteria. And so from my perspective, you know, I think the board would be, you know, justified in approving and probably not justified in not approving. So that's where I fall.
I would agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Barley's comments on that. It's also not within this board's jurisdiction to decide if it becomes a rental property or it doesn't become a rental property, but based strictly on what is written in ordinance is how we'll be casting our votes this evening. Other discussion from the board? Mr. Hudson?
Kind of a sort of a diversion, but question for staff. I know we had a meeting the other day and we discussed form-based code, and there's which is not in place currently. But just for my information, this as a proposal, would we then get into the number 3 criteria for unique aesthetic, architectural, visual character? Would if an application like this came forward in the future on the form-based code, would they need to provide a rendering of what it was going to look like and that sort of thing to see if it fit in with character of the area?
So the hook there is this is just a 2-lot subdivision where one house is being developed. The code currently right now, we do not get into the regulation of anything less than essentially 3 units, whether that is you know, a multifamily building. You don't see us getting into the form and character of, you know, 1 or 2 single-family homes. So depending on what direction we go from an administrative standpoint with the new form-based code, we could or we could not get into regulating that. But the fact will be that we will have building types in the code that they would be referring to. So there's essentially guidance in the code for how you would build that in a context-sensitive manner.
Okay, thank you.
And I think is it accurate to say that, like you said, there would be guidance as to the form of the building, but it wouldn't be that the form would be you can't have a single family on them, right? I mean,
I think the important distinction, so if we were to look at something like the Camp Doucette development, where you're looking at 80 some odd buildings, I mean, in that case, very much so, there are times when applicants bring forth architectural plans, they're before the board for review and comment. Something like that is I think, much more of a candidate for that more of a microscope on the form of the buildings being proposed.
And I just think within our code today, and within most planning regulations, you do want to try to make whatever building you put in there fit in with the surrounding buildings. That's just a basic item that usually comes up in those codes.
All right, thank you. Other comments from the board? All right. Seeing none, looking for a motion. First, with regard to the waivers, we should address those first before moving on to other items within the staff report. So based on the testimony this evening, is any member of the board willing to make a motion with respect to section 6.1 within the staff report waivers? Mr. Varley?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and just to get clarification with staff, because I don't know that I got this correct last time. Is it the preferred method now to take separate motions as to each waiver, or given the nature of this application, would you deem it as sufficient to take one motion as to all three?
You could take one motion for all three as long as that is separate from the approval or denial motion for the application as a whole.
Okay, thank you. All right, so in that case, as to new business A24-0169 subdivision, I would like to make a motion to approve the three waivers that were requested by the applicant. More specifically, a waiver from section 190-282B9 to waive the requirements to show existing conditions within 1,000 feet. A waiver from 190-221C to waive the requirement to provide utilities underground, and from section 190-275A to waive the requirements to provide a lighting plan. And that would be based on a finding that strict conformity with those three sections would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver request would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation.
Great, thank you. So we have a motion by Mr. Varley to approve the three requested waivers. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Approved unanimously. Moving along, any member of the board willing to make a motion on approval of the application? Mr. Varley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, as to new business case number 824-0169 subdivision, I would now make a motion to approve the application as a whole, finding that it does meet the criteria for approval in subdivision NRL section 190-138G, with subject to precedent conditions A through K is written in the staff report, and subsequent conditions A through E written in the staff report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Varley. And just a quick point of order, that would be, I believe, a motion to grant conditional subdivision approval. Does that exact verbiage need to be stated, Sam, or?
You can say it's stipulated in the staff report, but I did want to capture BPW as a condition.
Or is that
Okay.
in the
It's in,
report?
it's in Joe Mendola's letter.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
But and I'm sure he asked for a note to be added to the cover of the plan, so both those things are. I mean, we couldn't approve the subdivision without that being granted, it just delays their completion of the work. So I don't know if we need to stipulate it in our, other than that those notes are added to the plan, so it's clear to whoever's building this that. that's
Whatever you're
condition.
comfortable with as it's an
Yeah,
engineering
I'm
comment.
comfortable with what we have currently, without that.
Okay, very good. So it seems like Mr. Varley's motion does not need to be amended. So is there a second on Mr. Varley's motion?
Second.
Second by Ms. Harper. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right. Next item on the agenda, other business. Review of tentative agenda to determine developments of regional impact.
Do you want to just note?
Oh.
I don't know if there's anybody here anyway, but just
Oh.
note that the next case is.
Oh, certainly. Yes, apologies. Case number 824-0140, 25 through 27 Greeley Street, was postponed to the October 17th meeting. So it will not be heard tonight. It will,
My name is Mark Burkovich. I live at 41 King Street, but
is,
Yeah.
I'm confused.
No.
Can staff clarify, please?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. I got in touch with Gateway, their engineer.
Kate said.
Yeah, and you're going next week, so
okay.
that should give you a call. Okay. Sorry. That'll be the 17th, and he's assured us that he'll have the updated plan for you at that time.
Apologies, thank you. Thank you, Adam. I thought they were just interested in the potential projects of regional impact.
They were still
All right.
sitting here, so I was
No.
wondering.
That's all right. Apologies. All right.
No.
Moving along, again, other business, review of tentative agenda to determine developments of regional impact. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review the projects from the last technical review committee meeting and is willing to make a motion? Mr. Varley.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that having reviewed the technical review agenda, there are no proposals of regional impact.
All right, motion by Mr. Varley. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, under other business, Housing Opportunity Planning Grant Program 2.0. Sam, did you want to take a couple minutes?
Sure, I'll be very quick. So some of you may remember the HOP Grant 1.0. Very graciously, we were awarded a full amount for Phase 2 and 3, which is a nice supplemental $150,000 to the budget for the Land Use Code. Principal Group has been working very hard. You saw a presentation last month kind of summarizing some of the work that we've done so far. The state, through ARPA funds, the Invest New Hampshire program, has rolled out a HOP Grant 2.0, which is very exciting. They recognize the value of trying to address the housing crisis through local regulatory changes. So we put together a proposal. It would address our site plan and subdivision regulations. So land use code is essentially the zoning ordinance, a whole bunch of regulations that really form the basis, the regulatory basis for how the city functions and develops land. The site plan and subdivision regulations are really like those executing regulations, really that you see before you. Those are the things that we waive or don't waive when they're requested. But those really are what puts the code into action and informs what the plans look like and so on and so forth. So this is a great opportunity to update those in lockstep with the zoning ordinance. Originally, the idea was that staff would handle this update because we deal with these all the time, but this presents an opportunity to leverage the professional acumen of principal to update these in concert with the entire land use code so that there's a real unified regulatory approach between the land use code, the zoning ordinance, and the site plan and subdivision regulations. Part two of this is there's been a lot of interesting conversations through some of our community engagement efforts around accessory dwelling units. Kind of a fraught issue in Nashua, but we're also learning, as we've heard at some of our zoning board meetings, where right now you need a special exception to develop an ADU on your property. Some of the concerns from abutters are, what is it going to look like? So the idea is we would work with Principal, who very fortuitously also does development. They have architects on staff. They do these sorts of things. We're going to work with them to actually develop 3 pre-approved building sets for ADUs. And we're talking 35, 55-page building plan sets where you could walk into the building department and flip through the catalog of ADUs and say, oh, I'd like a permit for that, provided the lot works and you can build it on site. You could walk away with a full set of stamped plans and a building permit that very same day. So predictability for the neighborhood, but also drastically reducing the time and the money needed to actually develop an ADU. So we think we have a very strong application to go for this pool of money. But as part of the application requirements, a little add-on in the 2.0 versus the first one, the steering committee is looking for a letter of support from the planning board as well as the mayor. And the mayor has already provided a letter. I do have a draft letter here, which I will provide for your review. And we did very graciously, the application was due on Monday, which we submitted, and they very graciously had granted us a extension to provide a letter from the planning board tomorrow. So I can do Bob's signature tonight if the board deems it a worthwhile grant application to support it.
Sam, just a point of order. Does the board need to take a vote on this, like similar to other aldermanic motions? Or?
I would love an affirmative vote from the board supporting this grant application. That would be much appreciated.
Myself and Mr. Varley had an opportunity to review the grant application materials prior, I personally would recommend its support. I think it's an opportunity for the city to expand on work that's already begun. So I think as long as we're moving towards, I think it's consistent with what's already been done and moving towards the code updates that we've heard about previously. So I think big picture, this fits in with other initiatives already underway in the city. So obviously, if you have more specific questions, feel free. There's the subject matter expert. But I would be in favor of granting favorable recommendation on the HOP 2 application. Or questions, or Mr. Varley?
Not question, just sort of reiterate what we've said, and for similar reasons would support the favorable recommendation.
I totally agree. I think having 3 units available for people solves a lot of issues with, like, what is it gonna look like, who's gonna be using it, that sort of thing. So having that available to the public to see and potential applicants is a great resource.
Agreed. All right. Further, yeah, Dan, go right ahead.
Yeah,
please.
to the ADUs, I just think we need some clarification in our process in terms of sewer permitting related to those. So that's something that we can work out as part of the ordinances. We've talked about, adding that somehow to the building permit application, if it's an ADU. So we have some issues to work out there, but I'm not opposed to providing, a standard that makes it easy for people to put them in, I guess. I don't know how it's viewed in terms of that it's challenging currently, maybe because they have to hire their own professional staff to provide those. And again, I don't know what the requirements are. I don't know, like, when you go to submit a building permit application, do you need I guess the plan doesn't need to be an architectural plan designed by a licensed architect in the state of New Hampshire. I don't know if that's the case or isn't the case, but my guess is probably is not, but that'd be another consideration, just make sure whatever we do is in accordance with whatever state laws apply. So, I'm not opposed to it in principle and would support this letter.
And Sam, to Dan's point, is that something that principal would look at? Like, it's not just a cookie cutter of that one looks
Yeah.
nice. No, there's actual engineering implications involved, or at least public health and safety with respect to
Absolutely.
sewer.
So part of the time and the money side of getting a building permit is every plan, whether it's an addition, it's a new house, whatever, people are going to be living in it, it needs to meet certain building codes. And we have a plans examiner who his job is to look through and make sure that these plans all comply with all the applicable codes. These plans are essentially pre-approved, and we'd be running them through our building department's office to make sure that they do comply with all. So your review time is now already done. There is no, here are my plans, I'll wait 2-4 weeks for a review, and then I can come and get my permit. We've cut that out of the process. That's what we're trying to do here. So it really expedites the process for getting a permit. Relative to Dan's question about the ADUs and the sewer, we are actually currently working on a solution right now in terms of the information that applicants for special exception for ADUs receive, and they are made aware that they need to update their sewer permit. That's currently in the works and will be implemented very shortly, and will carry through the new code as well.
Further questions? I know there was there continues to be moves on the state level in terms of laws around ADUs. Did anything materially change this year at the state level, state law?
I think there was
that
some
we're aware of?
pretty interesting stuff that was proposed. I don't believe any of it made it through, which quite frankly is good for us because some of them were a little wild and would have been difficult for us to administer. And I think we've got a pretty good system going here, so.
All right.
I would like 5 pre-approved options. Like I'm a little worried about this being a little too cookie cutter in terms of what people had to select from. So I guess in concept I like the idea, but maybe it's possible to even take it further. I don't know what there are for designs out there. I know I have a neighbor up where I live that built a very nice one. It's very, very attractive. Yeah, I am a little bit worried about having it end up being too cookie cutter in the city. So anyway, food for thought for the future.
It's a very good point. I would just make 2 points about that where these are offered. People can still work with an architect and design their own and do their own thing. These designs will be, so principal's been on the ground doing survey. This is where those form-based standards really come from. They know what their buildings look like. And there is a range, and these will pull from that. We don't want them all to be, this part of the range. They're going to do a good job of representing the housing stock. And so I think that, we'll avoid that cookie cutter trap. Because I would also think it's important to note that while the architecturals, are the bones of these buildings will be, there's going to be 3 different structures, if you will. The siding, the color, all of that is not architectural or structural, I should say. So that's completely up to the person who is building the home. So from that aspect, you would also have changes in orientation of the structure. I think you could get some dynamics there, and given the number of ADU permits that we see a year, it's not like we're going to be seeing all the same thing and every single subdivision having an ADU. So I think we'll be all right. But I like the idea of more of these if they're successful. I think this is a good test where we're not we're trying it out. We'll see how it goes, and if it's worth further investment, we'll make that determination at that point.
Are there, sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, please.
Are there lot size requirements where you can do an ADU? There are.
Yeah. So same thing. All your setbacks. There's going to be some density requirements, they're gonna be a little bit different in the code, but same idea. So yeah, you're still subject to everything, really. Yeah.
Okay, and they are required to be, I mean, they're on a lot that's owned by somebody, so it's not, they're not condominiumized.
No, definitely not.
And there's a maximum square footage too, right?
Yep.
Do you know what that is offhand?
Currently, yeah, I believe it's 750.
Okay.
We are exploring going larger. We will see. Really gonna come out of the public engagement sessions we do.
Okay, so that's something that can be set on a municipal level, that's not a
Mhm.
state level.
Until the state decides to change that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And Sam, just for clarification again, this is an application for a grant, $100,000 to further develop this. If the city does not receive the grant, would this effort stop or be stalled or?
Yeah, if we're unsuccessful, the priority is site plan and subdivision regulations. So we would probably begin to tackle that in-house. You know, the ADU, this is a real opportunity to do something that's really quite progressive. So I'm hopeful that that just makes our application really strong. So fingers crossed.
All right. And to the questions that Dan has raised, there'll be obviously opportunities for engagement
Oh, yeah.
during that process. If
We've written it all into,
principals
we have
engaged.
a public engagement plan that's all
Okay.
part of the budget. Yeah, it's all detailed in the grant application, which I'd be happy to forward to everyone who might be interested in it.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions from the board? All right. Okay, see none at this time. Is any member of the board willing to make a recommendation, favorable or otherwise, with respect to the HOP 2 grant pursuit? Ms. Harper?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a favorable recommendation in regards to the HOP Grant Program 2.0.
All right, thank you, Ms. Harper. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I'll see you after. Okay,
Yes.
all right. Next item on the agenda, draft 2025 meeting and deadline dates. Very excited when I saw this come out. I did a quick back of the envelope check. I think we've avoided all the major school holiday weeks. April vacation, February vacation. We missed all the major holidays as well, so January 2nd's a little tight, but you know, I guess you got to go back to work at some point. My only real comment is just a minor typo. It does say 2024 at the top.
Oh, good catch, thank you.
But it looks pretty consistent. Obviously, one meeting each in July and August, which has been pretty consistent with my time on the board. I know that those summer quorums are tough anyway. So, but yeah, my general thoughts. This looks pretty reasonable. But obviously, if I'd like to hear back from the board if you see any issues or concerns there. You're not necessarily committing to being there on all those dates, but it looked okay to me.
Yeah, I agree. The January 2nd's a little bit close, but otherwise it was good.
All right. All right. Any further discussion on that? Sam, we don't need to vote on this, right? This is just a discussion item.
Yeah, I believe. Why don't we just take one just in case?
Just in
We
case?
have
Okay.
typically voted.
Okay.
We have,
Just
yeah.
to
Okay.
formally
Yeah.
adopt the schedule.
Understood. All right. Before we do so, is everybody okay with January 2nd?
Mr. Chair?
I can't commit.
You can, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
June 19th is the Juneteenth holiday,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
a city holiday.
Oh, okay, the city has
So we
that,
might
'cause that one is
consider moving
gone.
that one.
Okay, good catch. I didn't,
Make it 20. Tuesday, next day. That would put it on a Friday. Oh, okay.
Wednesday,
Do a Wednesday, yeah.
maybe.
How about the next Thursday? No, I'm gonna have 2 Thursdays in a row. That won't be good. Just cancel.
Yeah, I know we have one meeting in April, is that, is because of school vacation
yeah.
conflict usually?
On June 19th, we could push to the 26th because there is no July 3rd meeting. That's getting bumped to the 10th, so it's not like we would have 2 planning board meetings weeks in a row.
I would have no objection to the 26th.
I'll come back with any reasons why that might not work at the next meeting if we find any.
Okay.
So do we want to hold off on a vote till next, or?
We could make a, make a motion that we want to modify one of that date to June 26th, and I think that would suffice. So, Dan, thank you for the reminder. My bad for missing that one. I don't get that day off. That's probably why I
should have kept my mouth quiet, and then I had a night off for one of them, but that's okay.
All right, so, actually, what's the February
Are we
calendar again?
voting or tabling?
Hold on, just seeing if we have any more to change. The 6th and 20th in February, and then 2 and 6. 6 and 20. I don't know, just because it's fun to ask. January could be the 9th and the 23rd, because then, similar to last time, February isn't again until the 6th, so you still have a 2-week gap in there. That's if January 2nd is cutting it too close for folks. Any thoughts on that? If that's,
I like it.
you like it?
I like it.
All
Much
right.
more likely to be there.
It could be a
I
vacation.
don't want to show up for a lack of quorum.
Just in case, okay, all right, so, so January.
What are we agreeing to?
Well, it's January to the 9th, what are you saying about the?
January 2nd to the 9th.
January, I'll do January 2nd.
Yeah, so the January,
This is my daughter's birthday, so,
oh, which day?
January 2nd.
Oh, well.
Oh, so this
Another
works for you.
reason.
This is, yeah.
So it works.
All right. And so 9th, so January, we're going to suggest modifications to the 9th and the 23rd.
Okay.
And June 19th, make a modification to the 26th. And I think that covers it. Does anyone see any other dates out there that might cause issues?
Do you want to decide between the 9th and
No? All right.
Mr. Chair, I would move to adopt the 2025 meeting and deadline date, well, meeting dates as amended, understanding that staff will modify the application deadlines, technical review deadlines, and a butter notification deadlines accordingly.
All right, motion by Mr. Hudson. I mentioned, you guys jotted that down, or do we need the, okay, cool, thank you. All right, motion by Mr. Hudson to accept the 2025 meeting deadline dates as noted. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Right. Next item on the agenda, consent agenda, final approvals. Sam, did you want to give a brief overview here and just give the board a little direction on expectation as well?
Certainly. Without getting into really weedy legal backgrounds, there's been some Superior Court decisions, and there's the key difference between conditional and final approval. And basically, we need to eventually say from, we grant conditional approval, when does it become final? Well, looking at the statute, we can, or basically staff can certify to the board that this application has met all of its precedent conditions, and therefore now the approval is final. Statutorily speaking, we have to certify to the board that is a fact. These consent memos effectively convey that compliance with precedent conditions. So you can just take a kind of a vote saying, yes, received, thank you, we'll put it on file, and this effectively serves as notice to the board that these are now final approvals. What that would mean, really in light of the Sturgio v. Dover case, the appeal period for what you see before you on the agenda tonight would effectively begin now for these, rather than a conditional approval that was, say, granted to 61 Manchester Street tonight. That actually wouldn't be appealable until it's a final approval. So there's some weird things going on that we're trying to navigate. I think we might actually get to a point where we'll be issuing final approvals. Just we need to confirm that the precedent conditions that we typically impose on plans actually can meet the statutory definition of a subsequent condition. And if that is indeed the case, we can then be issuing final approvals. Therefore, for the sake of the applicant and any potential appellants, it makes more sense that, okay, the board made a decision and that can, the appeal period starts the following day. But for now, we're kind of in this weird legal limbo, and this is our current fix.
All right. Dan? Yep.
I had a question because I couldn't remember. On the Riviera University, had they made their traffic corridor contribution?
Yes, they have. I confirmed that today.
Thank you. That's the only thing I confirmed that all the other engineering comments had been addressed on these as noted. So I'm good with it.
All right, and I guess procedurally, Sam, do we need to take these one at a time? Is it just an acknowledgement of the board, or are we, like, what is procedurally what is expected?
I packaged them into a consent agenda for you, so just one vote is fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, if we truly intend it as a consent agenda, it would typically be just one vote to approve everything, unless you said we need to take this off the consent agenda.
Right. If there was an issue with one of them, you could pull it from consent and vote on that separately. But yeah, one vote for the entire consent agenda would be fine.
Okay, thank you. All right, Sam, thank you for the explanation and the clarification on that. So I guess with that being said, if the board is comfortable with the items as noted, we'll be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda items as noted on the agenda, case A24-0121, case A24-0037, and case A24-0105. Mr. Varley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would make a motion to approve those three items as part of the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Varley. Motion by Mr. Varley, is there a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Any discussion items? Last minute items?
I had a question.
Certainly.
The criteria approval, like cheat sheets that we have, is it possible to post those on the website? Because I think we only have the planning board procedure, or maybe I'm missing it, like, in the main page.
Yeah.
I don't know if that, just to help people kind of understand what we're approving against versus, personal comments.
Yeah, I think there's a way that we could do that. I mean, they're in the ordinance, but
Yeah.
obviously,
I don't think.
the layperson isn't going to navigate the ordinance with any real ease. So, yeah, I think there might be a way that we can either link that into the procedures or some way where it's easier to find, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully help people understand, it's like, all right, we can bring things to them, but they have to make sense for this form. Try the best, so it's not waste their time too, so, yeah.
Yeah, we'll look into it.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Speaking of time, we won't delve into it tonight, but maybe as part of our business meeting at the end of the year, heard some feedback from some board members, specifically on merit. I think most people here were around for the asphalt plant too. What, if anything, we need to do as a board potentially to keep public comments online, or at least a little bit more time constrained. I don't know if there's a singular right answer, but it's something I think we should discuss. Again, there are other bodies within the city of Nashua that are more strict than others, but I think there's, the general tone is that this is a lay board. Everybody's volunteering their time and spending 3 hours on a case that may have been not worthy of such time just because it was kind of remanded back with such a narrow focus. If there's a way to maybe curtail things a little bit. Speaking with Sam briefly about this, he doesn't see anything, at least in our near term, where we would have to deal with that again, which is why I think we could potentially put it off till our end of year business meeting. But I at least wanted to put that out there. Obviously, I'd welcome your comments at any time on that. You can always reach out to me, but it's just you're walking a fine line, right? You don't want to cut somebody off. Today might have been an example. There's no way we were going to get everybody to be happy with that, but at what point are you really just talking about, the ordinances under consideration? Those are the only real guidelines we have. It's anyway, without going down a rabbit hole on that, that's always up for discussion, but so bring your best ideas. So Dan, did you have something on that, or?
I was gonna start sharing ideas, but.
I wasn't trying to put it in the spot.
I'm okay with that too.
I'm welcome to hear it, so.
No, I mean, most boards do a timer, I think our establish a 45-minute session or an hour session or whatever ends up in an inequitable distribution of time used by some of the people that speak, and so you get to the end and there's not time for other people to speak or speak, they have to speak very briefly. So, I mean, I would, in controversial cases, I would welcome a 3-minute timer, 5-minute timer, or whatever the case may be. What was the other thing? The other thing I question just in general is, are we happy with continuing to allow Zoom, receipt of comments via Zoom? Most boards have moved away from that.
We had said no more Zoom.
Yeah.
But then.
There was an outcry for it, or?
Yeah, so I'm very much in favor of.
It was fine tonight. Again, it's a problem when we get to those bigger cases with lots of.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people in the room and then we have a lot of people on Zoom, and how do we?
It's just not a good format.
We should be prioritizing probably the people in the room in that case, but then people on Zoom need to be heard too. So that's another thing. That at times has been problematic. Tonight there was one person to speak. That was not a problem, but I question if that's something we should continue to offer.
Yeah, and I guess I would maybe flip that one back to staff. I'd love to see Zoom eliminated, but again, I don't know if there's a legal concern with that, where you have to provide reasonable access, but I don't know what constitutes reasonable access.
I mean, reasonable access in consideration of how other boards, we have elevators, we can provide listening devices. I mean, that's generally the expectation. But I believe when we had shifted from always having Zoom to what we currently do, which is really Zoom on request. I think that was the direction the board chose to go in at that time. And, you know, like we've all observed, no other boards offer that. So totally at your discretion as to whether or not we should maintain it or keep it on just what we're doing right now on a request basis, or eliminate it entirely.
I'd like to eliminate it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I'm
would agree.
just curiosity, I mean, I think I know that the zoning board still does Zoom, is that right? What board's currently doing Zoom, do we know? Conservation Commission does not. Zoning board, I believe, does. At least I attended a meeting a few months ago. I think Zoom was part of it.
Do you recall zoning?
I don't believe they.
I don't think they do.
So
No.
they might have a similar on request. I'll speak with Carter
Yeah,
in the
that might be
morning, but
Or maybe
no.
that was just from some members that couldn't be in person. I can't remember, but.
Yeah, I mean, and we can certainly make accommodations for members. I mean, we always have to have an in-person quorum, but if
Right.
another member wanted to participate on a particular case, they could via Zoom.
I mean, there will always be the Zoom, because that's how the city records, and I believe records and distributes the meeting later, which is a great system, the city system for making, I mean, I walk out of a meeting, it's almost, it's almost posted already, so, I mean, it's amazing, that service that we provide in terms of getting the information out there to the public. But allowing the input via Zoom can be cumbersome, so.
When I've asked other planning boards if I could join by Zoom, I usually get a kind of a laugh, like, we don't, you know, I can't think of any other planning boards that still provide that at this
Well,
point.
yeah, I'm glad that we haven't, I don't know if we haven't allowed it or there haven't been any, but having the applicants be here in person has been helpful, because that was very problematic in the past with them not being able to get the audio working right, or the plan to present, or that sort of thing, so that at least has been refreshing, that those have all been in person to my recollection for quite a period of time. You know, I don't know if that's something we should consider for public input as well, that that be required to be in person. People do have the opportunity to send in written testimony, and it becomes part of the record, we review it, so I understand people can't make every meeting, but it doesn't mean they haven't had an opportunity for input or the opportunity to review the meeting process.
I would agree. And I don't know, is that something that we can change unilaterally at any time, or is that something that, all right?
I'd like to take it up when we have all board members present, maybe.
Certainly.
For the fairness of everybody, but it sounds like we have a consensus, at least in the room, maybe, that.
Well, not only a consensus, we have a quorum.
We could do it.
We could do it right now. No, I think it would be valuable to.
I'd like to hear the input of others, but I mean, I think,
Yeah.
my sense would be maybe we should move away from that. So.
All right. Appreciate everybody's thoughts on that. Anything else this evening? No? I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Ms. Harper?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting as adjourned at 8:44 PM. Thank you, everybody.